And then please give us the recording.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I will tomorrow. I'll
Or take your time.
on a
Yeah.
Dropbox and
Yeah.
throw it in.
No
If I
rush.
take my time, I'll forget, and then you'll have to hassle me about it. So I feel like our time is really short. So I'm gonna like not do the like read your bio and stuff. I'll add all of that at the whenever I like edit and put it all together.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but Elisabeth, you are harder, you don't have a CV out there and haven't been on a bunch of podcasts and written a bunch of books. But I gathered from LinkedIn you're at Cornell as an undergrad and you're doing like a bunch of research. But hopefully you guys can introduce each other. But before that, would you place yourselves in context a little bit? So like your race, gender, sex, religion, and because it's a podcast, it's audio, your name pronunciation correctly so that I make sure I learn if I have to learn.
You want us to introduce ourselves right now?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah. And then I'll have you like introduce your personalities, but just your like, yeah, all your pronouns basically.
Okay. I'll go. I guess Grace Jisun Kim. I'm a female, ordained Presbyterian woman, and I teach theology at Earlham School of Religion, which is in Richmond, Indiana, but I live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So it's a joy to be here on your podcast.
Thank you for being here. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm Elisabeth Sophia Lee. I'm a current sophomore at Cornell University. I'm home right now. I'm home for the rest of the semester, but I was up in Ithaca, and I'm a female. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And yeah, I think that's about it.
And do you have a religious identity, Elisabeth Sophia?
Oh, I'm Presbyterian as well. Yeah.
Okay. So would you guys just introduce each other to my listeners?
Okay. So I'm so excited to be here with you today. And it's great to have my daughter. So I've got 3 children and she's the middle child. So 2 boys. She's sandwiched in 2 boys.
Hey, the best part of the Oreo is the cream filling. Let's be honest.
Right. I like to say
right, yeah.
I like to say I'm the rose between 2 thorns.
Yeah, that's true too. So yeah, so she's wonderful, because I'm outnumbered by all the men in the house with my husband and the 2 boys. So it's wonderful to have a daughter in the house, and just a joy that she was up in Ithaca all this time, and she just came home a few weeks ago. So it's great to have her here until January.
And what is she like? Describe her to me.
Very energetic, smart. She's a dancer, so she's been dancing all her life. Ballet dancer. She's been in many shows, performances. Very healthy, athletic. So she isn't dancing currently, but she is running and keeping herself fit, exercising and stretching. And before I got sick, we would exercise together every day when she was home, but I haven't been able to exercise since I got sick. So hoping to do that when I'm fully recovered.
Yeah.
And that was a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, just to talk about what my mom was just saying during quarantine, I think that was when we were home for the longest time together. That was definitely the longest consecutive time that we were all at home, all 5 of us, not just me and my mom, but my brothers as well, because my older brother just graduated college. So I think for the first time since in 5 years or so, it was all 5 of us at home. But yeah, my mother, she's a great woman. I definitely look up to her. She is very accomplished to me. What? It's true. She is able to balance a lot of things, and I'm really grateful that, although this year has posed a lot of challenges for us, we were given this time to just grow and bond and get closer with one another. I think that was something that I don't know. It's definitely difficult to do with our busy schedules, but quarantine definitely allowed us to take a break and, yeah, just get to grow closer with one another. Um, and just spending time with my mom, I've seen more of her energetic side and less professional. You know, she was able to relax more, which she doesn't do a lot. She's always busy, always traveling. I think prior to this year, at the end of last year, she was taking at least 3 flights a week. And it was a lot for her. So I think this definitely forced her to relax and take care of herself, because sometimes she overlooks that, and which is not a bad thing. She's just That's just how she is. She likes to always be working, and yeah.
Yeah, we've been,
Thank you,
one of our
Elizabeth.
like thoughts around COVID has been like, we feel like we live in a monastery, like we never
Yeah.
go anywhere. These are like, this is our monastery. But we didn't realize we were going to be like hermits in the monastery,
Yeah.
Like,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
sometimes it's a bit much. So,
And I never thought it'll last till now. I thought
yeah,
by summer it'll be over, but yeah, this is a
here
long
we
Here
are.
we are.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Grace, would you share how parenting has been a spiritual experience for you?
Um,
'Cause
yeah,
did you
that's
become a parent while you were getting a PhD also?
yes, so which is very unusual thing to do. So it was very hard. So I started my PhD and I said, oh, when I finish, I'll have kids. So I just got married, started my PhD, and then in the middle of my program, doing my comprehensive exams, I got pregnant with my son, my oldest. And that was hard. In the middle of the program, I thought, I'm never going to finish the PhD, and I was sick. So it was overwhelming. It was unplanned. So you get a little shocked, and what am I going to do?
Mm,
And I went crying to my supervisor, and he's like, "Oh, that's the best news I've heard all year."
mm,
And I said, "What are you doing? What do you say?" But looking back, I think it all worked out. He's a
mhm,
great son, smart, athletic, very talented and gifted in so many ways. So I think parenting, I think our whole life is a spiritual journey, it's a spiritual walk. So we hope that whatever we're doing, whether we're parenting or we're looking after our parents, whatever we may be doing, that it is a spiritual exercise. It is part of our spiritual growth. It certainly has challenged me spiritually in so many ways.
mhm,
So I think, yeah, it's just parenting, it's a gift from God. And sometimes it happens not in our time or the timing that we want. But when it does happen, I think it's all a gift from God, and we need to take it graciously and with thankfulness. And how we parent is a challenge, but it's a spiritual journey. So I think we should understand, and I hope your listeners, I'm sure most of them are parents, will come to appreciate, when you have little kids, mine are all older now. But when they were so tiny, it was so hard.
mhm,
And it's like, oh, what did I get myself into? I had three little kids at home, and it's so hard, and you're juggling work and everything else. It's really, really hard. And I couldn't wait till they got older. But like everyone says, don't, enjoy it when they're young, enjoy them. And then it's like they grow so fast. So I kind of regret that, I didn't get to enjoy them so as much as I should have. I was just hoping that they would get older and older and older, so it'll be easier for me.
mm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, your response was definitely like the cleaned up version, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're past the like
Yeah.
diapering
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
messes. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
It was
different world.
hard. Yeah. It
Yeah.
was, it was extremely hard. I think when they were young, I think when the youngest was born, the oldest was 4. So everyone under 4. And then even when the oldest, up till about when he was 7, when they were all so young, that was like the hardest time
Yeah,
ever.
and you're
It
like
was,
trying to get jobs and
yeah,
just
and
trying to pay for
yeah,
daycare
yeah,
even.
it was hard. So all
Yeah.
the parents out there raising little kids, my heart is with them right now because I know how hard it was for me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, Elisabeth, will you share about like the spirituality sort of in your home growing up? Like, did you, I mean, your mom, I don't know anything about your father, but is your mother as a theologian? Certainly there's at least like God talk at the table. What was the spirituality around in your home?
Right, yeah. So, my mother was the first person to really introduce me to God and my faith. My dad is also Presbyterian, but mainly my mom. She kind of really raised that within me and my brothers. So because she was a pastor, a theology professor, I essentially grew up in the church. I went to Sunday school, I went to VBS, I was a part of my church worship team, and I went on numerous retreats and mission trips as well. But although my mom was very religious, she never really forced me into my own faith. I think she allowed me to develop my love and relationship with God. And for that, I'm really grateful for actually, just because I was able to turn to God at my own time and really recognize that, God isn't forcing anything. He is there with open arms. He's there to welcome you at any point, any stage of your life. And so, because of that, I think I also was able to develop a more genuine and closer relationship with God, because it wasn't my mom just, pushing me, but rather letting me grow uh, myself, really. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of how it worked in my household. I think my brothers could say the same thing as well.
In the Yeah, I grew up in like in Catholic land. So my imagination around God was very informed by masculinity. So I'm just curious, as in your experience of, I mean, you can only know yours, but do you have a sense of like divine feminine in some way, having a mom as a pastor? And yeah, would you just unpack that at all if that resonates in any way?
Yeah, for sure. She definitely was a big role model of mine, like I said before. And she also does have a very strong voice and mind when it comes to anything she does, really. And so, because of that, it definitely was inspiring to see that. I did kind of feel like I was in a bubble because I like you said, I only know my own experience. And so to me, I was like, oh, yeah, like I'm sure everyone's moms are like this, or, there is that female representation in, theology or Christianity or anything at all. But ever since I would say high school, I did notice that there was that lack of representation, not just female representation, but also Asian American. And to see my mom kind of, she was a trailblazer in a way. And yeah, recognizing that as I grew older and matured was very shocking to me. And I was like, wow, I saw my mom in a new way, really. I was like,
You're
you
just
know,
like making mommy gush all over.
no, but it's very true. And
It is
to
true.
see
Yeah.
that, it definitely allowed me to step out of my bubble and perceive things in a different way, and just take more, I guess, just become more cognizant of that
Mhm.
fact and realize that, yeah, there is a lack of representation. And for my mom to be doing it for this long and to be continuing to do it was very inspiring to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I didn't I wasn't aware, Grace, of any of your previous works. I found the book you
Oh,
guys
thank you.
wrote.
Yeah, can you hold it up? Because I was meaning to, yeah, bring it
Yes.
and hold it up. And then we were in a rush. Yes, I'm so glad you have a copy.
Yeah. So as somebody who does a podcast on parenting, this like came up and I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. And even when I invited you to be on the podcast, I had done like a superficial search. I knew you were at Earlham. I'm in Indianapolis. Like, oh, okay. And then I asked you to be on the podcast. And then I was like, whoa, this woman is like the Elisabeth Sophia Lee of the Asian theology world. Like, oh my gosh. Like I immediately sort of like was just in awe. So thank you for being
Well, thank
willing.
you for the invitation. Glad to
Um,
be on.
but then I think as a writer and a theologian, to sit down with your daughter and say, we're gonna what do you like think of writing this text together? It feels like a different wheelhouse for you, and not your theologian wheelhouse. Maybe you're like mother pastor wheelhouse coming together.
Mhm.
Will you talk about each of you, like how did you decide to do this book together? And also, like, Elisabeth, you were clearly younger when you wrote it, and so like my question, especially for you, is like, what would you change now about what you wrote?
Okay. So I'll begin about how we got. So the book for the listeners, because you can't see the cover, it's Mother Daughter Speak, written by myself and my daughter, co-written together. So Mother Daughter Speak, and I by then I've already written several books, and I thought I always wanted to do something with my kids. So when Elisabeth was talking about the spirituality in the home, we used to pray and read the Bible every night until I think the kids got to middle school. And then we just kind of, it's hard to gather them every night because they're so busy. Everyone has off schedule. So I'm always hoping, and I just say, just do it on your own. But it's hard. I think this day and age, parenting, it's not like when we were growing up. Um, Parents are busy. People have weird schedules. Before the COVID hit, people are just running around and we
Yeah,
don't know
now we have
where we're
nothing.
going. Yeah, where we're going. And so I just thought I wanted to do something with my kids that will be very meaningful. So I asked my oldest if he wanted to do the book with me, and then he said, sure. And then he got too busy. So I thought, I'm not going to push him. I asked him when he was in high school, and then I just let it go because he was really, really busy. Then I said to Elisabeth, so you started this in middle school, right, Elisabeth? Yeah. And then she
Yeah.
said, yeah,
Oh
she
wow.
wants to do it. I said, okay. I said, if you're going to do it, you have to commit. And she said she will. So Elisabeth is really strong-willed because of her dancing training. So
And her
once she,
DNA.
yeah, so once she set her mind on it, she was able to do it because I had strict deadlines, and the publisher, we were all working on strict deadlines, and we had to get it done. So that's how the book started, and I was very happy. And it's different topics that we cover in the book from a mother's perspective and from a daughter's perspective. But I think it doesn't have to be really mother daughter. It can be a parent child perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's kind of important because I was Googling and I was thinking, are there many books by mother and daughter? There's hardly any books. We're just a handful. So I thought this is really exciting. And I'm so glad that we were able to finish it, having these different perspectives on who God is, on climate change, racism, gender issues, about church, about immigration, about death. It's a small book, but we were able to cover a lot and reflect on it theologically from different generations. So I'm very proud of the book. I'm proud of what Elisabeth was able to accomplish at such a young age. When I was in middle school, I was still, we were growing up, we were always playing outside. So I was always outside running around until my mom called to come home and have dinner. So I'm just really proud that she was able to complete this. It's an enormous task. People who've never written a book they don't realize how big it is. And also people think co-writing is easier. It's actually a lot harder, a lot of negotiation. My friend was saying she was negotiating with her co-author about about a comma, both arguing about a comma. And I thought, you know what, there's bigger things to argue about. But that's a good example of all the negotiation, what needs to go in, what can we delete, what topic should we cover. So there was a lot of things. And in some cases, when people co-write, they become enemies at the end.
Mm,
Elizabeth and I were able to grow together, and I'm just very proud of what she accomplished with the book.
yeah.
Yeah, so to add on to that, like my mom mentioned, I think the idea started when I was in seventh grade, and it was basically written based off of reflections I had done previously in my life too. My mom had a blog, and often whenever I traveled with her for work, I would write about my experiences in a different country, and you can see some of those written in the book as well. So, of course, we went through them and we changed some things, but in the end, I think it was published then my junior winter, like junior year of high school. So it was a very long process, and I was wondering, I was like, how long will this take? I'm almost graduating high school, and it took a lot longer than
Yeah.
I had imagined. And so by the end, obviously I had grown so much.
Yeah.
I think high school, and now that I'm in college, I realize how transformative these years are. But especially then, I realized how far my writing had grown as well.
Mhm.
So looking back, like you said, I don't think I would change anything per se. I think those were my exact thoughts that I had at that age, and I think it's worth noting. And I'm really grateful to have that on paper.
Mhm.
If anything, I would say like a sequel. I think that would be
Yeah,
cool
I know. Yeah,
with
I
me
think, yeah.
now,
Yeah.
Yeah.
now that I'm
Because a lot has
older.
changed. Yeah.
Oh
And the
yeah,
baby's older
so
too.
much.
Right. Right.
Right. More
Everyone's
We're aging
wise.
together. Yeah, more wise.
Yes, exactly. So I think being able to write on similar topics that we addressed in our book, and just explaining maybe how my perspective has changed
Mhm.
or grown would be really great. And I don't know, I think that it'd be cool to look back on when I am older and have my own kids and see how and what I was thinking at those ages.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the book also offers the opportunity to like do like theological reflection with kids who are capable of it. Like my oldest is really, she's 11, and really aware of the world. She's aware of the race dynamics in her classroom and the poverty dynamics, and she's aware of like that her image of God is not the same image of God that a lot of her classmates use
Mm.
in all sorts of ways. And I am like, just in talking, I'm like, wow, this would be an interesting book to like sit down with her and just talk through some of that, and for her to find the voice of a bigger kid,
Yeah, I
and
hope
not
you
just
do
my
it.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think I will.
Yeah. No, because I actually know of other parents who are doing that and grandparents doing it with their grandkids. So I hope
Yeah,
you do it. I would love to hear what
yeah, I'll let you know. And
Yeah.
so much of the literature out there with kids is like, my 4 kids is very evangelical, and
Mhm.
that's not my perspective. And so I get really sort of suspicious around it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I'll let you know.
Okay, yes, I would love to
It's a
hear. Yeah.
richness there for sure. So
Yeah.
I want to know, like, what are the fights you had over it though? Remember?
I think the only kind of fight was you got to hurry up. That's all I remember telling her. You got to hurry up and get it done. Because you know what? I'm not in school. I teach, but I can remember when I was in school, there's all these deadlines and tests.
Mhm, mhm.
And I felt bad um, telling her the deadlines, but there was no other way to do it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the only thing I remember. I don't know about you, Elizabeth.
I think that was the similar thing. Yeah, that's all I can really think of as well, just because during the school year especially, it was really hard for me to keep up with the writing. Like my mom said, I I was very busy, and yeah, I think I did kind of prioritize school just because that was the most immediate thing
Yeah, uh-huh.
occurring in my
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
So it was really the summers that I had to take advantage of, and so that was when most of the work was done.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Grace, you've written many books in the hereafter. And it seems to me that when you write a text, I just submitted a deadline for like a devotional, and sitting with the like lectionary text every day for really intensely very much like shaped my just my world. Like last week, I was like, why are people talking about Advent? It's Lent. It's like, no, it's not Lent. You know, we're not approaching Easter, only in my brain, right?
Yeah, uh-huh.
I was in this world. And so I'm curious, like, how like your texts and your theology have shaped you. Um, and especially as you've been parenting.
Okay. Well, I think, theology, when I think about the last 2000 years, I don't know how relevant or meaningful it has been for women. Written by white male theologians, heterosexual theologians. So I think if spirituality and theology, it has to have some meaning for us today. It
Mm,
has to have some relevance. If it doesn't, then it's just some philosophy or philosophers kind of talking to one another. So that's why many of my books, you know, either liberation theology, feminist theology, or about parenting, about climate change, there is relevance, and it's relevant. It has to be relevant because God is present in this world. God is not just somewhere out there, but God is present in us and among us and with us. So I always keep that in mind when I'm writing, that the book should be transforming people. It should be somehow transformative. I know it won't be for everyone
mhm,
because no book can be transforming everyone, but to certain people out there,
yeah.
maybe to young kids or to older people or immigrants or women or certain. So I find, spirituality as a spirituality for every day, and I think theology is the same. It should be for every day. It needs to address these important issues that are life changing, that are life threatening, that is destroying the world. We did in Mother Daughter Speak touch on climate change because that's one of the most important topic of our time today. And the quicker we deal with it, the better we will be off. But if we keep pushing it off, we're going to end up destroying the earth. So, yeah, that's how I kind of approach the books. And I hope it's just relevant for those who are reading it, either in the classroom or in the church or in the house.
Or have there been books that like transformed you, and what were those transformations? Like, where did you just sense, wow, I am different from having written this? God did a number on me.
Well, I don't know if the books really changed me, but I think the writing process has always changed me because every book has its own challenges. I have a new book coming out, Hope in Disarray. Writing that, it's very similar to this Mother Daughter Speak book. But I think maybe the one that kind of changed me the most is Embracing the Other,
Mm,
because I opened up a lot of my own personal experiences in that one. So
yeah.
if you haven't read that yet, you can try to read Embracing the Other. And I
Mm,
have a new book coming out next year with Fortress Press called Invisible. And that one, I'm in the editing stage, and that's another book where I'm opening up even more about my life growing up as an immigrant. So the
mhm,
racism and then the sexism that I experienced in the church.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that is even more than Embracing the Other. So, it's hard. It's hard to talk about it. Sometimes it's easier to write about it. And then after it's written, it's in public, then it's okay. But before it gets there, I'm a bit hesitant because it is all personal things.
Vulnerable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very vulnerable. So, yeah, those have changed me. And then writing, I think mother-daughter speak changed me a lot too, because it's one thing to just have fun with your kids, but it's another thing to work on. This is the biggest project I worked on with any of my
Yeah,
three
yeah.
kids. So
Yeah, it's not just a paper mache project.
yeah, it's it was like 2, 3, I think it was a 3 or 4 year project. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's a big project. And I know many people who start books never finish it. And I know why, because sometimes you just have to have discipline. You have to negotiate, especially if you're co-writing. You have to
Yeah.
let things go, let that comma go.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and even some of the topics and how we're going to approach it. So
I
I
mean,
think,
is that like a statement about parenting or what?
yeah.
Like sometimes you have to let things go.
Yeah, that's why I always love the word parenting, because when we think of parenting, we think of raising kids, but it's really changing parents. It's like how you become a parent more than how you raise that child. So I just think it's really interesting that we use the word parenting
Yeah,
for
yeah.
raising kids.
Yeah, I mean, my podcast is called Bringing Forth, and that's in Latin, to parent means to bring forth.
Uh-huh.
And I'm always like, I'm not really sure who's being brought forth
Yeah, I
here.
think it's us, the parents. Yeah.
Like, I used to think I was a pretty good person, and then I had kids, and I really had to contend with my awful side.
The worst comes out.
Totally. You have to like see yourself in this honest space. Yes. Elisabeth, would you share like seeing your mom in an honest space as she has written and like, yeah, sort of birthed these books and these theologies?
Yeah. Well, most of them occurred when I was pretty young. I think middle school and yeah, middle school I would say was when they were just coming out one after the other.
She modeled all my books. So if you go to my
Yeah.
Instagram, you'll see all the books that she's holding, except for 2. She's modeling all of them.
But that was really what I saw. I saw the behind the scenes work and I saw what she did and all the preparation and all the time and effort she put into each book. And some she was writing multiple at a time. And to see that was really crazy and and amazing as well. It spoke a lot about her character and also just who she was as a Christian and as a daughter of Christ, really. To see that she was so persistent and never really gave up. Of course, there were obstacles she faced just in life in general, but to see that she never gave up and was very consistent with her writing and with her storytelling just proved to me how great God's grace can be. Not to make a pun or anything, but no, yeah, it's very true. And so um, I think that was kind of when I started to recognize how omnipotent God is, and also that's kind of when I allowed Him into my own life. So as a result, I guess, of my mom's writing and of her work, maybe I didn't really understand as a young child what she was saying, but seeing how He worked through my mom was definitely life changing for me.
Wow. Wow.
Mm.
That's beautiful. There's
Thank
so
you.
very little angst in what you're saying, Elisabeth. Like,
Thank
I
you.
can't imagine that your house is always like so joyfully exuberant about one another, but I'll take it.
No.
We love each other a lot. It's just once in a while, you get on each other's nerves. But
Of course, of
thank you.
course.
Yeah. Elizabeth.
um, let's see. Yeah, so you talked a little bit about like vulnerability and the experience of writing as like very vulnerable. And I read an article you wrote about vulnerability and parenting. And I just so appreciated, you talked about like feeling inadequate. One day you'd be like, I have got it together. Everything's perfectly arranged. And the next day you're like screaming your head off. And I totally read this in the midst of COVID. So it was like the grace of God right there in that article. I mean, I did like scream at my son for not being able to count to 10 yesterday. It's rough. I was like, of course, 10 plus 0 is 10. It's not hard. So I was just wondering if you would share about like that mix of like parenting and vulnerability more. We've definitely touched on this conversation, but like, how is that dance like important to you, and how is that part of like spiritual practice, like being in that?
I think once you show your vulnerability, then I think we're open more to God's grace and mercy. And I
Yeah.
think we need God's grace and mercy every day because, we're not great people all the time. We try, but we fail more than we should. We lose patience. We lose, parenting just tests your patience every day,
Mm-hmm.
especially with young kids. As they get older, it's a little different, but with young kids, it tests your patience. So I think we need to be vulnerable, understand our shortcomings, understanding, sometimes we don't have to be a super mom all the time, so we can show our vulnerability to each other and to our kids. And I think then they'll show a bit of grace to us too. I think everyone needs more grace from God and from each other. So if we can show our vulnerability in our own parenting, then I think we'll receive more grace and mercy. So I think that's kind of how I approach it. And I hope that that will be helpful for other parents who are really struggling to, especially as moms. I think less so for dads, but for moms, we want to be these super moms. Uh, you know, in this day and age, we want to have a career. We want to have the best kids, you know, best of everything. And sometimes we can't. And sometimes our health fails. Sometimes we lose jobs. Sometimes our kids get sick or something happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I think being vulnerable and allowing God to work in our lives and accepting things that we wish wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
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 So I think that's all tied in.
Yeah. Thank you. So the book also, so on my list of books to buy is the one, Healing Our Broken
Yeah.
Humanity,
Uh-huh.
that you co-wrote with Graham Hill. Because I just think it sounds so helpful. Everything I listened to about it was like, it seemed helpful in terms of thinking about church communities and faith communities. But every time you listed like all the chapters: reimagining church, renew lament, repent together, relinquish power, restore justice, reactivate hospitality, reinforce agency, reconcile relationships, and recover life together. That list, for me, I want to read this text through the lens of family life.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yep. Mhm.
would you? I haven't done so yet, so I don't know, but would you speak to that?
Yeah, I think when we co-wrote that book, and Elizabeth and I actually went to Australia last year to do the book launch. So
Did she
she's
have to
heard
write
it
an essay this time?
every time they go on a trip, they have to write something, otherwise they're not going on a trip. But so she got to meet Graham and we had a great time. We did the book launch. So she's heard me talk about the book many times. But we wrote it because there's so much brokenness in the world,
Yeah.
either as individuals or as communities of faith, and also as family.
Mm.
I think so many broken families everywhere. I think the divorce rate speaks for itself. And then parent child relationships are broken, trust is broken, abuse happens in the family. So, with all that in mind, we kind of wrote this book. How can we work towards healing? So,
Mhm.
all the chapters you listed there it's not like, oh, you got to read chapter 1 and then read chapter 2, or it's a
Yeah.
step 1, step 2. It's just a whole, a book. You just have to list them, and that was why it's there, but it's not a step book. We need to do all of those things so that we can work towards some healing that we experience as individuals, either as women. We still live in a patriarchal world. No matter how much we talk about gender equality, we're not at gender
In a white
equality.
supremacist world.
Yeah, we're in a white supremacist world. There's brokenness everywhere: racial discrimination, gender discrimination, sex discrimination, everything. There's so much discrimination. So, relinquishing power for those who have power. We cry out to God, we lament, we need to practice forgiveness, and reconciliation, all those things that you listed, and how we become new church and how we become family. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping, once you read the book, that you can kind of read it through the lens of how I can help my family to become stronger and
Yeah,
heal from the brokenness. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been I have this like instinct that all theology might start with family. Like
Mm.
I don't know what to do with that sort of, but that right now in my life
Uh-huh.
that is true.
Uh-huh.
In the midst of like having little kids,
Yeah.
all of my theological thoughts and work like begin
Uh-huh.
there.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh-huh.
so I want to be respectful of your time. Can I ask one more question?
Sure. Uh-huh.
Okay. So I read recently, and I don't remember where, but like an idea that like the philosophical question, why did God create humans? What is it about humans that nothing else can do? And the answer is posited that the only thing humans can do is to be fully human. That's their unique place. And so my question is, for each of you, Grace, how does parenting make you more fully human? And Elisabeth, how is your mom inviting you to fuller humanity?
So I think, not everybody gets to be a mom or a parent. So I think it's a privilege in many ways. So I'm just so glad that I am a parent. I think that's just one experience. Life is so short, and that's one experience I would not have not wanted to have.
Mhm.
So I can't remember your question again, though.
How has parenting made you more fully human? What about?
Fully human, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think parenting, it tests you in so many ways. It allows you to experience so many things, like giving birth. Like, I don't know how much more human you can
Yeah.
be than the experience of giving birth. That so being a human is mind, body, and soul. So I think parenting allows you to experience physically, challenges you mentally, and it makes you kind of grow spiritually. You recognize as a parent that God has given this child to you as a gift, and you don't get to keep them forever, and we don't live here forever on this earth, but for the time given, how long or how short we have, I think it teaches us what it means to be human, which is that we are all created in God's image. And so, being created in God's image, we give thanks for the life that we experience as a parent, and that the child that God has given us through our bodies, um, you know, is from God. And, I guess that experience just makes your experience as a human being so rich, so fulfilling, and such a blessing.
Mm.
So I just feel so blessed. I never thought I'd have 3 kids, but I have 3 kids. And if I always said I enjoy parenting so much. If I wasn't working,
Mm.
I would have had, 2 or 3 more. I think it would have been great to have lots of kids and stay home and just raise them. But 3 is plenty. Just thankful for the 3 great kids that I have.
Yeah. Elisabeth?
Could you repeat the question one more time
Sure.
again?
Yeah. The question is like, how has your mom specifically invited you to to be more fully human or connected you with your humanity?
Mm. So actually, it's quite funny because growing up, often I would get frustrated with my mom if she would tell me to go study or do this, do that, do these chores, and I would be really upset with her. I was like, why do you have to make me do all these things? But as I'm growing older, I am realizing why, and I see myself doing the same things to others, including like my younger brother even. um and I'm like,
Poor
oh
brother.
wow. He's gotten it at every level. um, but yeah, I think more than, of course, my mom's DNA and her blood runs in me, I do see more tangible things, and a lot of her mannerisms I see that I've adopted as well. And so, yeah, and her morals and her ethics, of course. So I guess in that way, she has, I don't know. It wasn't like a direct transition, obviously. And I think as I'm growing older, I'm realizing how similar I am to my mom and how much she has influenced me more than I had ever thought. Um, and I see that especially as I live with my friends. I have an apartment in Ithaca, and seeing how even just how we live around the house in our apartment, how differently it is. And that is because it is the product of how I was raised by my mom at home. Yeah. I don't really know.
Oh, that's great.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you so much for sharing and your time and dealing with all the logistics with me. Thank you for being on this podcast.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for the invitation. It was a joy to meet you over
Yeah.
Zoom, and thank you for the questions. There's a lot to continue to think about. So thank
Yeah.
you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Can
Thank
I
you, Rachel. Yeah.
can I share one other thing without